Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Jaya Girivara Dhari Jaya Girivara Dhari Yashodanandana Jaya Brajajana Ranjana Jaya Brajajana Ranjana Yamunadiravanachari Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Yamunadiravanachari Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Hare Krishna. We are reading from the third canto, 5th chapter, entitled Vidura's Talks with Maitreya, verse number 5. Karoti karma nikritavatarō Yanyatmatantro bhagavam triyadishaha Yatha sasarjagra idham nirihaha samsthapya vrittam jagato vidhatte karoti karmani kritavataro yanyatmatantro bhagavam striya disha yatha sasarjagra idam nirihaha samsthapya vrittam jagato vidhatte karoti karmani kritavataro yanya atmatantro bhagavam triya dishaha yatha sasarjagra idam nirihaha samsthapya vrittam jagato vidhatte Mataji's. Translation and purport. Translation purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Before that, we read the synonyms. Karoti, does them. Karmani, transcendental activities. Krita, by accepting. Avataraha, incarnations. Yani, all those. Atmatantraha, self-independent. Bhagavan, the personality of Godhead. Tri Adhishaha, the Lord of the three worlds. Yatha, as much as. Sasarja, created. Agre, at first. Idham, this cosmic manifestation. Niriha, although desireless. Samsthapya, by establishing. Vrittim, means of livelihood. Jagataha, of the universes. Vidhatte, as he regulates. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. O great sage, kindly narrate how the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is the independent, desireless Lord of the three worlds and the controller of all energies, accepts incarnations and creates the cosmic manifestation with perfectly arranged regulative principles for its maintenance. Purport. Lord Krishna is the original personality of Godhead from the three creative incarnations, namely the Purush avatars, Karanar, Karanarvanashayi Vishnu, Garbhodakshay Vishnu, and Shirodakshay Vishnu. Expand. The whole material creation is conducted by the three Purushas in successive stages under the external energy of the Lord, and thus material nature is controlled by them. Thinking material nature to be independent is like seeking milk from the nipple bags on the neck of a goat. The Lord is independent and desireless. He does not create the material world for his satisfaction, for his own satisfaction, household affairs, to fulfill our material desires. Actually, the material world is created for the illusory enjoyment of the conditioned souls who have been against the transcendental service of the Lord since time immemorial. But the material universes are full in themselves. There is no scarcity for maintenance in the material world. Because of their poor fund of knowledge, the materialists are disturbed when there is an apparent increase of population on the earth. Whenever there is a living being on the earth, however, his subsistence is immediately arranged by the Lord. The other species of living entities who far outnumber human society are never disturbed for maintenance. They are never seen dying of starvation. It is only human society that is disturbed about the food situation. And to cover up the real fact of administrative mismanagement, takes shelter in the plea that population is excessively increasing. If there is any scarcity in the world, it is the scarcity of God consciousness. Otherwise, by the grace of the Lord, there is no scarcity of anything. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmelitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guroho Shri Uta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhan Vitamscha Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishthaya Bhutale Shri Mate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschyatya Desha Tarine Namo Mahavadanyaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namane Gauratushe Namaha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namastute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Rishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha Kalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare Rama 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 Hare Mukham karoti vachalam pangum langayate gram yat kripatamaham vande Shri Gurundina Tarinam. Hare Krishna. I'd like to welcome all the devotees for today's Srimad Bhagavatam discussion. Before I begin, I'd like to seek the prayers of all the devotees that whatever I speak, may it be in parampara, may it be pleasing to the Lordships Shri Nitai Gaur Chandra, and may it purify my heart. Also, today's Bhagavatam class was supposed to begin by Jai Krishna Prabhu, but due to certain unfortunate circumstances, because Prabhuji had to rush to Delhi because of his mother's health, we also offer prayers for her speedy recovery so that she can once again be back. Okay, so today, a very beautiful purport Srila Prabhupada has written here, especially without taking much time into going to the context of this verse, as previous devotees have, already much elaborated on it. I would like to talk about this very beautiful statement which is given in the translation, and which Srila Prabhupada has nearly dedicated half of the purport trying to make us understand this. So Srila Prabhupada in the translation writes that the Supreme Lord, He accepts incarnation and creates the cosmic manifestation with perfectly arranged regulative principle for its maintenance. And Srila Prabhupada, elaborating on this particular statement, begins, there is no scarcity for maintenance in this material world. Because of the poor fund of knowledge, the materialists are disturbed when there is an apparent increase of population on the earth. Whenever there is living being on the earth, however, his subsistence is immediately arranged by the Lord. And Srila Prabhupada ends this with a very beautiful statement, where Prabhupada says, if there is any scarcity in the world, it is the scarcity of God consciousness. Actually, the context of this verse is where, a question is being asked by Vidura to Maitreya about the Purush avatars, right? And in this, Prabhupada talks about a very beautiful concept of how the world is self-sufficient. So today we will talk about the theme of how modern scarcity versus the Vedic prosperity, which is very relevant to today's discussion. Because yesterday night during my preparation, I found so many beautiful conversations of Srila Prabhupada, so many beautiful purport points within the Srimad Bhagavatam where Srila Prabhupada has emphasized upon this particular facts. And today also we will also try to read a conversation between Srila Prabhupada and amongst his disciples where Srila Prabhupada throws very beautiful, Prabhupada elaborates on this concept very nicely. So today we will talk about 4 points, how whenever we talk about Vedic prosperity versus modern scarcity, there are 4 aspects that prominently stand out. We will take one aspect, and that will be the basis of our discussion today. So the first aspect is about sustainability. The second aspect is about simplicity. The third aspect is about, thank you. The third aspect is about sufficiency, and the fourth aspect, which holds the first 3 aspects, is spirituality. So we'll talk about these 4 aspects and how we can gain practical life lessons from this also. So the first aspect that we will talk about is sustainability, right? Today, modern prosperity is measured in terms of certain parameters in the world. Like today, in today's world, we talk about GDP, right? We talk about the gross domestic product, or we talk about the per human capita, or we talk about how many people are there below the poverty line, or we talk about budget deficit. So these are modern terminologies which are used in today's world in order to understand how much a particular country is prospering, right? But we need to understand all these statistics that the world proposes to us, that we see on the charts. If you see, actually these statistics are very human-centric. They are very human-centric. Because even for all these statistics, for these numbers, ultimately what do we use is resources from nature. And therefore these statistics, while they talk about prosperity in terms of individuals, they do not talk about the toll that it has on nature, right? It doesn't talk about the toll that it has on nature. Especially from these numbers, you do not understand how much, and how long will the resources last. So therefore, in today's world, these statistics give us very misleading figures. They mislead us in a way and manner where we don't understand what is the pressure that is taking on, or what is the toll that is taking on nature. And therefore, if you see Western prosperity or the modern prosperity that Srila Prabhupada would very much talk about is very unsustainable. Why? Because it primarily bases its model on non-renewable resources, like, for example, oil, petrol, diesel. And therefore, if you see, modern economy is basically a very linear model. Why is it a linear model? Because it is based on what you take in, whatever is the raw product, will eventually over a period of time run out. And whatever comes out as a result continues to pile up, right? And therefore, according to even world statistics, like I was just going, I was just browsing the internet, where world statistics say the current oil reserves, the global oil reserves are around just 1.56 to 1.73 billion barrels. And the rate at which we are today consuming the world's natural reserves, like especially the oil, it will last for just another 50 to 60 years maximum, right? Therefore, this is a big cause of concern with regards to sustainability. But now if you compare it with traditional Vedic culture emphasized more on the usage of renewable and recyclable resources. And one of the most prominent things is cow, the cow dung. That's why when Srila Prabhupada he writes, when he formed the new Vrindavan community, the very first instructions he gave to his disciples is that new Vrindavan community should be primarily based on self-sufficiency, and self-sufficiency based on cow protection, that Srila Prabhupada emphasized upon. Because even there's a body which is connected to ISKCON, which is called ISKCOP, International Survey for Cow Protection, which talks about that even if a cow is unable to give milk, because the cow gives milk only when the calf is born. But even if the cow is maintained, even if it is unable to give milk, still the dung, the gobar that is produced of the cow is a very viable resource which leads to a lot of prosperity, because the cow dung can be used for the nourishment of the soil. So therefore, you see Vedic nature, Vedic culture or Vedic prosperity, like modern economy is very much based on linear economy. But Vedic culture is very much symbiotic. What is the meaning of symbiotic? The raw products, the waste products becomes the raw product for the for the entire system. Like for example, we see, like taking the example of cow, right? The cow eats grass. The cow gives cow dung, gobar, and gobar is a natural fertilizer for the soil, and the soil which is once again used to raise crops, which again eaten by the cow. So you see, this is natural. This is the natural cycle. This is the natural symbiotic factory that is created by the Supreme Lord. How beautiful it is. We also see another example of symbiotic factory in nature is that with regards to trees, right? Trees, what do they give out? Trees give out oxygen, which in turn is consumed by humans. And humans give out carbon dioxide, which is actually a waste, but which is a raw material which is required by the trees. And whatever dead leaves or wood is thrown out by the trees, when it is decomposed, naturally becomes a manure for the soil. So you see, the more we align ourselves with nature, the more there is prosperity, right? But unfortunately, modern civilization's dependence on plastics, on metals, on non-renewable resources is becoming a cause of concern, for the world today. So therefore, this is the first aspect. Whenever we talk about modern scarcity and versus the Vedic prosperity, the first aspect that stands out is sustainability. The second aspect that is prominently talked about is also simplicity. Like we have, in the traditional system, we have the beautiful system that has been created by Krishna is Chaturvarnya Maya Shrishtam, the Varnashram system, right? Where if you see the Varnashram system, right from beginning itself, Varna is for the body, right? And Ashram is to cater to the needs of the soul. So Varna, when we talk about Varna, like a particular person is born in the family of a Brahmana. So a particular person is born in the family of a Kshatriya. So his very much, even though Krishna clearly says in the Bhagavad Gita, Chatur Varnya Maya Shishtam Guna Karma, one's occupation is very much based on guna and karma, but birth also plays a very consequential role, right? Why? Because Srila Prabhupada gives an example. If suppose a person is born in the family of doctors, so that particular atmosphere is very, very conducive for him to become a doctor. The likelihood of him becoming a doctor is very much. Or Srila Prabhupada gives another example in a lecture. A person who's born in the family of weaver, a mother is in the profession of a weaver, the father is in the profession of a weaver. So very naturally, the son or the son or the children in the family automatically take up to that profession. So therefore, there is a head start right from the beginning. There is no, and because child, in the very beginning, when the child, it is very easy for a child to learn certain skills, from the very beginning. And therefore, he has a head start. But if you compare it with modern education, like we see in today's modern education, because of the glamorization of fields like engineering and medical, like, I remember seeing one movie where, one very famous statement was made. Agar beta hua to engineering, agar beti hua to medical science, right? So this is the today's prominence that is given in today's culture, unfortunately. But what happens is, today children, they study for 14 years of their life. They undergo the modern education, they undergo then 4 years of engineering, but they land up not applying what they have studied. And what happens as a result, now, like for example, a person doing mechanical engineering or civil engineering, he ultimately lands up into taking up an IT job, right? You can just imagine what all that you have learned in all your years of engineering does not come to use, and as a result, it only creates problems. It creates two problems mainly. It creates anxiety, because now whatever you have learned is of no use anymore, and you have to learn new things in order to compete with today's outside world. That is the first thing. And as a result, what does it create? It only creates unemployment. That's when Srila Prabhupada had once gone to a university, and Prabhupada asked one student, who eventually became a disciple of Srila Prabhupada. He asked the student, what are you studying at college? So this particular devotee, this particular student told, Swamiji, I'm studying sociology, So Prabhupada asked him, so what does sociology mean? What do you deal with? So Prabhupada said, the particular student said, we deal with social problems like alcoholism. So Prabhupada thought for a moment, and he said, so they study alcoholism, they study about how to avoid alcoholism, but then after they have studied for the day, what do they say? Okay, I finished my study, now let us go and have a drink in the bar. And therefore, this modern education never impressed Srila Prabhupada at all, right? So therefore, that's when Srila Prabhupada had arrived at an airport. So one big press reporter, interviewed Srila Prabhupada. Prabhupada, Swamiji, why have you come to America? Prabhupada said, I have come to America to give you brains. Because you're a headless society, you don't have any brains, so therefore I've come here to give you brains. So therefore, Srila Prabhupada, this modern education never impressed him at all. So therefore, Srila Prabhupada, there's a very beautiful article which I came across, recently with a book reading, in a book reading session with certain students, where Srila Prabhupada talks about, which is very much in line with this purport, where Srila Prabhupada talks about how the modern technology is actually a pathway to hell, and how modern technology is only becoming a source of unemployment only. Very beautiful. So I would request two devotees, if we have two mics, maybe one Hari Bhakti Pru and one Halda Pru, maybe. Just to save time, I've just called out names. Yes. So we could just read this. So one could take the role of a devotee, and the other one could take the role of maybe Srila Prabhupada, maybe devotee and Halda Pru as Srila Prabhupada.
In a recent speech, a politician in India said that 80% of the Indian people live in rural villages. His proposal was to increase the technology on the farms. instead of people having to harvest the wheat by hand, they would have motorized harvesters. And instead of having to use bullocks to pull the plow, they would use a tractor.
In India, many men are already unemployed. So to introduce more machinery, there is not a very good proposal. 100 men's work can be done by one man working a machine. But why should there be so many men unemployed? Why not engage 100 men instead of engaging one? Here in the West also, there is much unemployment. Because in your Western countries, everything is done by machine. You are creating many hippies, frustrated young people with nothing to do. That is another kind of unemployment. So in many cases, machines create unemployment. Everyone should be employed. Otherwise, there will be trouble. An idle brain is the devil's workshop. When there are so many people without any engagement, why should we introduce machinery to create more unemployment? The best policy is that nobody should be unemployed. Everyone should be busy.
But someone might argue, the machine is freeing us from so much time-consuming labor.
Free for what? For drinking and doing all kinds of nonsense? What is the meaning of this freedom? If you make people free to cultivate Krishna consciousness, that is another thing. Of course, when someone comes to our Krishna consciousness movement, he should also be fully engaged. This movement is not meant for eating and sleeping, but for working for Krishna. So whether here in Krishna consciousness or there in the outer society, the policy should be that everyone should be employed and busy. Then there will be a good civilization. In the Vedic civilization, it was the duty of the head of the society to see that everyone was working, either as a Brahmana, a Kshatriya, a Vaishya, or a Shudra. Everyone must work. Then there will be peace. At the present moment, we can see that on account of so much technology, there are unemployment and many lazy fellows. The hippies are lazy, that's all. They don't want to do anything.
Another argument might be that with technology we can work so much better, so much more efficiently, so that the productivity of those who do work goes way up.
Better that more men be employed doing work less efficiently. In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, Sahajam karma kaunteya sadosham apinatyajet sarvarambha hi doshena dhuvenagrir vyavrataha. Every endeavor is covered by some sort of fault, just as fire is covered by smoke. Therefore, one should not give up the work which is born of his nature. O son of Kunti, even if such work is full of fault. And a Hindi proverb says, Bekari se begari achhi hai. Bekari means without unemployment, and begari means to work without salary. In India, we have seen many villagers come and request a shopkeeper or any gentleman, please give me some work. I don't want a salary. If you like, you can give me something to eat. Otherwise, I don't even want that. So what gentleman, if you work at his place, will not give you something to eat? Immediately, the worker gets some occupation. If the gentleman sees that he is working very nicely, he will say, all right, take some salary. Therefore, it is better to work without any remuneration than to remain lazy, without any work. That is a very dangerous position. But in the modern civilization, on account of too many machines, there are so many unemployed people and so many lazies also. It is not good.
Most people would say these ideas are very old-fashioned. They'd rather have the technology, even if it creates a high unemployment rate, because they see it as a means of freedom from drudgery, and also as a means of freedom to enjoy television, movies, automobiles.
Technology is not freedom. Rather, it is the free way to hell. It is not freedom. Everyone should be engaged in work according to his ability. If you have good intelligence, you may do the work of a Brahmana, studying scriptures and writing books, giving knowledge to others. That is the Brahmana's work. You don't have to bother about your subsistence. The society will supply it. In the Vedic civilization, Brahmanas did not work for a salary. They were busy studying the Vedic literature and teaching others. And the society gave them food. As for the Kshatriyas, they must give protection to other members of the society. There will be danger. There will be attack. And the Kshatriyas should protect the people. For that purpose, they may levy taxes. Then, those who are less intelligent than the Kshatriyas are the Vaishyas, the mercantile community, who engage in producing food and giving protection to the cows. These things are required. And finally, there are the Shudras who help the three higher classes. This is the natural division of the society. And it is very good, because it was created by Krishna himself. Everyone is employed. The intelligent class is employed, the martial class is employed, the mercantile class is employed, and the rest, the Shudras, are also employed. There is no need to form political parties and fight. In Vedic times, there was no such thing. The king was the supervisor who saw that everyone was engaged in his respective duty. So people had no time to form false political parties and make agitation and fight one another. There was no such chance. But the beginning of everything is to understand, I am not this body. And this is stressed again and again by Krishna in Bhagavad Gita.
Thank you very much, Prabhu. So you see, this is a very beautiful conversation which actually highlights that in today's modern technological world that we are leading, actually it is leading to such scarcity in the world. Because in today's world of artificial intelligence, you see so much recession is happening. Like people are losing jobs, people are getting laid off. But Srila Prabhupada has given us such a practical solution as to how to evade these problems, right? So therefore, also there is a particular verse in the Bhagavad Gita, in the 16th chapter, Chintam aparimeyam cha pralayantam upashrita kama bhoga parama etavat iti nishchitaha. So you see, this is the nature of a demonic civilization. What is a demonic civilization? It only creates anxieties. Chintam aparimeyam cha. And what kind of anxieties? Immeasurable anxieties, right? Till the point of death. And therefore, parama kama. And therefore, when a person is determined that I only want sense gratification, this only causes tension. And this is very much resonates with the teachings of the Supreme Lord in the Bhagavad Gita. So therefore, we see even, if you see even today's world statistics, these complex lifestyles which today's modern man is leading, the statistics, 1 in 5 suffer from such anxiety disorders because of such uncertainties that are going in today's world, and 1 in 10 suffer from depression. It is said that America is the world's anxiety capital. World's anxiety capital, not due to poverty, but due to a very complex, insecure lifestyle. 2004 was one of the economically best years in America. But that was also the same year where around $2.1 billion was spent on antidepressant medication, which was actually double the amount that was spent in the year 1997. So you see, are we really progressing in the right direction, right? So, and now why does this all happen? This happens because when the culture becomes very materialistic, when the society becomes very external centric, it becomes very fashion centric. Like, see, when you go outside, in today's market, especially when we are living in such a materialistic culture, when you buy a pair of jeans, it is not just that you're buying a pair of jeans just because you want to wear. You're actually making a statement, of who you are. Or for example, if you're buying an iPhone, now, I'm not indicating any individuals here, but I'm just talking about a materialistic culture that we are living in today, where one is actually making a bold statement as to who am I, right? Because everyone wants to show, like even for example, a person has a beard, or a person who does not have a beard. Now these are very trivial things, these are very small things, even from a material point of view, but they convey a very deep point. Because what people generally, the outside materialistic culture generally judge you based on what you wear, what you have, based on the externals. And therefore, there is automatically a comparison. Like I remember when I was working in my company, so my manager, he was browsing through the latest car models. So I was asking him, we had a very friendly relationship with him. I was like, what happened? You just recently bought one car. Is that you're looking for another new car? He said, yes. So he was telling that, do you know that my co-manager, he has bought a BMW and I have bought a Maruti Suzuki. So I feel I should also upgrade. So you see how today's culture is very externally centric. So, and as a result, it just creates only anxiety. It only creates tension, right? So therefore, and such a outlook can also pervade in a spiritual society. It is very much likely. If the basis of a spiritual community is not Shravanam and Seva, even in a spiritual community, these tendencies can penetrate. Like for example, it could be a festival. A person who's a very good kirtaniya could not have got a chance to sing. And that person may feel, I'm such a good kirtaniya. I'm one of the always for every festival. I'm the one who leads. Why am I not given a chance? So you see, or sometimes, even in the name of spirituality, devotees may evaluate each other on the basis of how colorful a kurta you may have worn. Of course, like from a brahmachari, they have only one uniform standard dress. This may not be very applicable for a brahmachari, huh? Yeah, or yeah, whatever, plain white or plain saffron cloth, whatever it may be. But this could be the basis of, this could be the basis, even such tendencies can penetrate in a spiritual society. If service to the Vaishnavas or Shravanam is not kept as the key, is not kept as the basis or the foundation. There's something called as a terminology called institutionalization branding. Where, okay, yes, I'm wearing dhoti, I'm wearing kurta, I'm wearing such a nice tilak, which is definitely very important to maintain the sanctity and the sacredness, to connect with the Supreme Lord. But if that is not rooted on the basis of Shravanam and Seva, then all this becomes very external. It is just a show business. And therefore, a community over a period of time may just translate into a social club, right? So therefore, we have to be very, very careful. And constantly, we have to remind ourselves of these principles, right? So therefore, this is a very, very important point, right? So, therefore, simplicity is very much important, because when there is simplicity in the way we think, in the way we present ourselves externally, that itself reduces a lot of anxiety. So this is the second point that we talked about. Third point is sufficiency. Sufficiency, if you see in the purport, Srila Prabhupada is actually making a statement that this world is perfectly arranged in everything creates the cosmic manifestation with perfectly arranged regulative principle for its maintenance, where every living entity on this planet is perfectly maintained for. And Srila Prabhupada would give an example of the ant. The ant and the elephant. What are the quantities of food it requires is, there's a big difference. The ant finds its cube of sugar, and what about the elephant? The elephant requires tons and tons of grass. And then Prabhupada would very often question, who's providing the ant and who's providing the elephant, right? So therefore, the world is created in such a manner that everything is self-sufficient. And therefore, even traditional village economies, were self-sufficient and resilient in this way. Actually, if you see India as a country in the past 1000 years has been invaded many a times, right? If you see the history by Muslims, by the Turks, by the Iranians, They have by the Britishers, eventually by the Britishers. But actually, if you see, according to statistics, India always recovered from the invasion. You know what was the reason? The reason was because sufficiency actually originated from the villages. How? Because villages, they produced grains, they produced raw materials, and whatever surplus they had, that became a source of exchange, that became a source of local trade amongst different villagers. And whatever surplus more they had, that were sold in the markets. And then rich merchants would come, they would buy them, and those merchants would become a source of bustling cities. And these cities where temples were made, where there was source of so much of wealth, and that wealth was based on what? On the food production that was done in the villages. And what would the invaders do? The invaders would attack the cities. They would plunder the cities. And as a result, cities would get plundered. But again, the cities would get rejuvenated. Because self-sufficiency was originated in the villages. That is why you see India as a country, even though it has been invaded, and the extent to which it has been invaded, practically so much wealth being robbed off, but every time the economy could restore itself. But if today you have to compare it to today's economy, which is very a modern globalized economy which is based on industrialization, that is why in today's recent news, when we hear of the news that Trump is imposing, there is a trade war happening where he is imposing 50% import duty on the goods that have come from India to America, it is creating so much of anxiety amongst all the traders in India. Because if suppose something which costs $100, and let us say after a few days, 50% tariff is going to be imposed, what is going to happen as a result? Before it was duty free, tax free. Then whatever was 100, what was sold, what was got into the country for $100 may raise to a certain extent. But with 50% tariff, the same good is now sold at that country for $150, which creates a lot of anxiety. So therefore, because of such interdependent economies, there is so much of anxiety that is created. That is why Srila Prabhupada created a new Vrindavan community, where Prabhupada emphasized upon this principle of self-sufficiency, right? So therefore, we see how, like, even we see actually even in today in the during there was this very famous Bengal famine that took place in the year 1943 to 1945, where actually around 3.8 million Bengalis died because of starvation. And that starvation was not because of a famine. It was actually a man-made disaster. Actually, of course, I have not gone much into the political history, but there is a very beautiful lesson to be learnt out of it. Especially when the Japanese were attacking India on the Eastern Front. So Britishers needed help from the Bengalis there, and therefore what did they do? They took hold of the entire crops, and as a result, they took hold of the crops, and prices shot up, and they were selling the same crops at a very high price, and the Bengalis, they did not have any food, so therefore they were buying the same crops from the Britishers. But the Britishers said, if you want these crops, then you have to join the army. And as a result, they joined the army, but what happened? They lost the war with Japan. And as a result, what had happened? Because of this loss of war, whatever crops were in possession of the Britishers, they burnt everything. They burnt all the crops that were stored in godowns. And as a result, what had happened? There was starvation. To that extent, the Indian governor writes to the British governor at that point of time, Winston Churchill. He said, this part of India is suffering from the lack of food supplies. Kindly please restore. Winston Churchill writes a telegram back to the Indian governor, says that, why did Gandhi not die in that famine? He makes such Such brutal indifference was there at that point of time. Now, why am I giving this example? Because Prabhupada writes in the purport, it is only human society that is disturbed about the food situation and to cover up the real fact of administrative mismanagement. Right? Take shelter in the plea that the population is excessively increasing. So because of such administrative mismanagement, which is actually rooted in greed, which is causing so much of anxiety and tension in the world. And therefore, this leads us to the fourth point, that is spirituality. Therefore, spirituality is very important, right? So, sustainability may be there, simplicity may be there, sufficiency may be there, but we can hold all these principles together with a fine thread of spirituality. When Krishna is in the center of such a community, because once His Holiness Radhanath Maharaj was at the airport, there's this very beautiful anecdote which comes in the journey within, where at that point of time, the Minister for Foreign, the Minister for Forest Department confronted Radhanath Maharaj and asked him, so you are a spiritualist, but what are you doing for the economy? There is so much of problem that is going on. There is so much of pollution. What are you doing for the forests? What are you doing for the trees? What are you doing for the environment? And then His Holiness Radhanath Maharaj gives a very classical reply. Actually, yes, all of you have a very important role to play in the society. But we also have an important role, because while you all are working on the ecology of the environment, we are working on the ecology of the heart. The heart is polluted. So if we do not address the pollution in the heart, if pollution in the heart is addressed, then automatically the pollution in the environment is automatically addressed. So therefore, it is very, very much important that, without spirituality, without having a Krishna-centric community, without having Krishna in the center, societies will morally and ethically degrade. And whatever the first three principles of sustainability, simplicity, sufficiency that we talked about will not last if Krishna is not in the center of such a community. So therefore, Srila Prabhupada writes in the purport of 3.13, where Prabhupada writes, true prosperity comes when nature's gifts flow by living in harmony with God. And therefore Prabhupada says, therefore ultimate satisfaction of the Yagyapati is the chief purpose of all the Yagyas. Performance of Yagyas has many side benefits, but ultimately leading to liberation from material bondage. By performance of Yagyas, all activities become purified, as it is stated in the Vedas. Ahara shuddhau, sattva shuddhau, dhruva smriti. Smriti lambe sarva gratinam vipramoksha. By performance of Yagya, one's eatables become sanctified, and by eating sanctified foodstuffs, one's very existence becomes purified. By the purification of existence, finer tissues in the memory become sanctified, and when memory is sanctified, one can think of the path of liberation. And all these combined together lead to Krishna consciousness. And therefore, which is the great necessity of today's present day society. That's how Srila Prabhupada concludes. Now, what is the practical implication for devotees? Now, in today's world, it may be in the modern context that we are in today, it may be very challenging for us to return to those, to those traditional lifestyles. But at least we can integrate simplicity in our thoughts, in our lifestyle, which in turn will lead to, reduce in stress and anxiety. And as Srila Prabhupada gave the ultimate conclusion, while it may be difficult to switch to such a lifestyle, Prabhupada concludes in one of the purports by saying that we can take shelter of the Harinam Japa Yagya, of the Hare Krishna Mahamantra, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. When we take shelter of the holy names, automatically all the problems of today's modern society will get solved. And therefore, when Srila Prabhupada is talking about if there is any scarcity in the world, it is the scarcity of God consciousness. And therefore, this scarcity of God consciousness can be evaded automatically by taking shelter of the holy names. Thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai.